each one of these, but let me just first kind of introduce it. First of all, I talked a little bit about this trust bubble. I mean, right now, customers are thinking, consumers are thinking, it needs to be safe, affordable, and reliable. It's different in the metro and rural areas in terms of needs and wants, and we've got a very clear guidance around what are the needs and wants. But this idea that actually we had really good debates in some of the working sessions. Half the room were saying, you know what, we should offer all these new products and services. And the other half of the room was saying, actually, we should just keep it really simple and get the basics right. And the debate we had was, how far can you stretch that trust bubble in terms of what products and services do people expect you to offer? And how quickly can you move into that new areas? So I'll show you in a minute what we came up with. The second one is around, actually, you know what, people want to be able to control and compare, not just at the individual household level, but at a community level. So yes, I'm interested in cost saving, but actually I'm really interested in cost control and comparison, right down to an appliance level. So that was kind of interesting because we hadn't seen that before. So I'm really interested as a consumer to understand what appliances are using what water and how much. Just as now with the advent of in-home displays for electricity, for example, Origin Smart, AGL's got one of these offerings, True Energy's got one of these offerings. In your homes, you'll be able to understand down to an appliance level what's been used when and how, and obviously what it costs. Well, that is coming very quickly with expectations for that same consumer in that same household around water. And I'll show you some examples of that. The next one is the differences between water and electricity, and as I said, my kind of going in position was all the same. It's essential services to the home, and there is some very specific differences, and I think advantages in terms of the trust that you already have with the industry, and particularly the consumers. Insight number 4, again, we had a really good debate about this. The green Pandora's box. We'll talk a little bit about the findings in a moment. But the perception there was, it's all very well and good to say I'm green, I'm water efficient, or I'm energy efficient, but you know what, the expectation if you set that communication with consumers is they want your green credentials to be absolutely top-notch. So there's a healthy tension there. It's not enough to basically say we are a green company that is water efficient. You actually have to prove it to them and demonstrate what is it that you are doing to meet your kind of contribution. And if you don't meet that, well then I stop trusting you, because really all you're doing is selling me a product that kind of sounds and looks like it's green. Complacency. This was also a really healthy debate. I think, Peter, you'll remember this one. I was in the workshops, I was basically saying, how long are you going to wait until you do something? I was being quite controversial, a bit pushy and a bit bossy. Surprising, I know. And I was basically saying, okay, well, you can stand back and wait for a problem or a crisis, or you can start to act now and communicate with your consumers in a different way. Maybe not all consumers, maybe specific segments. It's hard to get out of this in the morning. But if you don't do anything, that certainly is going to unravel you pretty quickly. So don't be complacent. Insight number 6, we talked a lot about branding. How many of you have seen this brand Tap up in Sydney? Have you seen this? Seen it somehow. So for those who haven't seen it, Sydney Water are basically issuing bottles to cafes with a brand on the front that says Tap, and it's literally tap water. And they're marketing that as a brand. Because the water is clean, it's safe, it's reliable, and they're building a brand around that. Isn't that interesting? And then finally, you know, I think my personal point of view is you don't need to do it all by yourselves anymore. There's lots of partnerships out there, particularly if there's one set of essential services to a particular household with a particular need. And I think that's a great opportunity to have some partnerships. Or for example, if you wanted to launch new channels, for example, a whole online capability, you don't necessarily have to do all that yourselves. You can borrow those capabilities from somebody else. In actual fact, that gives you the opportunity to do things in a faster pace. Sound interesting? Should we go through each one? All right. So, I'm going to skip this one actually, but here's the trust bubble discussion. What was really interesting was firstly we saw very high satisfaction ratings, much more so than any home service providers. To the point where I said to the guys, the researchers, just go back and check the numbers, it doesn't look right to me. I spent 15, 16 years in this utilities industry and I was like, this doesn't look right. These are really high levels. 12% of customers were comfortable with the Water Corporation providing usage data, and almost 90% want the Water Corporation to tell them if they have a leak. So there's a number of things that came up very quickly, but the picture I really wanted to show you was this one. A little bit difficult to read in terms of the colours. But in the middle is what we expect, consumers is what we expect. We provide safe drinking water, we want you to do sewage disposal, we want you to fix and maintain the infrastructure. The debate we had was how far can you kind of move out in terms of offering different products and services. This was the most controversial discussion we had. Should we be offering non-water related products and services? Should we expand into some kind of home service or rural service? And the one that we talk about a lot in electricity and gas is home security, and whether you bundle up gas, electricity and home security as one service to the home. So we had a really good debate about this, and the conclusion we came to was actually, you know what, we need to get the expected components absolutely top notch and do that in a very, very efficient manner. Meet the customer expectations, make sure that they're satisfied at very high levels, and then when we've earned that trust and the community's trust, we can then start to move outwards. So for example, the one that we thought for the rural was around advice on water management, setting community targets, for example, including recycled water and potentially the drinking supply, advice on water restrictions. And so the debate was, how far can you break this cycle? How far can you expand this trust bubble with the different products and services? Does that make sense? This was a discussion about control and comparison. We basically said, okay, well, we kind of went in and we assumed that there would be a lot of interest in cost saving. 77% of the survey basically said that we want more detailed consumption information, more detailed, not just the household comparison against the number of people. We want more information. And when we asked what sort of more information, they basically came back and said, you know what, we'd love to see a community comparison, particularly in the rural areas. Tell me how, as a community in Mount Macedon, what are we using water for? What's coming from Turritable Creek? What's coming from town water? And what advice can you give us as a community about comparison? And there is an awareness around the service charges, there's no doubt about that, there's certainly awareness. But almost 70% said they'd actually prefer a bill where it's predominantly used on usage, and maybe the service charges are contained within that, rather than that separate component, which we thought was an interesting debate. So a usage comparison with similar households, there was a large percentage of people that were very interested in that. And a usage comparison that goes back 12 months. Now, a lot of that information is already available. But what's interesting is when you ask them what they want, they're actually telling you what they've already got. They're either not reading it or they're not looking at it. But the community comparison, I think, is very interesting. Certainly the desire to assist and support the community or to assist and support the neighbourhood is a very strong sense, which I think was built on top of the 155 campaign and people's desire to continue to act in favour of the community benefit. This was surprising. I want more information, almost 80%. And then in addition to that, we also want information down at the appliance level. And I'll show you that slide in a couple of slides' time. But if that is not possible, then I'd like to understand when I go and buy my new 5-star, 6-star rated washing machine from Harvey Norman, at the manufacturer end, they're now providing that information. So there's kind of a gap. When I go and buy the washing machine at the store, I'm told it's water efficient, I'm told it only uses X amount of litres of water. But then when I get my information on my bill, I have that missing piece. I want the control and comparison. And I want that down at the appliance level. Now, some people don't want that. There's not all segments want the same thing. But there's certainly a large proportion of people that want more information and they want more granular information so that they can control how they use water. So this is the comment about these are similar but quite different. 29% were more likely to view their water provider as a more community-focused entity than their electricity provider. We had a good debate about this. Why would that be the case? And it's really how people feel about the essential service. I think also some of the industry structural changes in electricity and gas have introduced a level of distrust potentially, particularly around the competitive market. And so you have the advantage that people feel that you are very community focused and that they have a very strong affinity towards the community. And also that water prices right now remain well below those of electricity, but are rising pretty quickly. Now you guys would know much better than me in terms of what your expectations are for future price rises, but I would really carefully think through how do you continue to build on the trust that consumers have with you, and think through the communications prior to any price rises, so that consumers don't get these price shocks, because they're already getting them in some of the other essential services. So the kind of expectation is, oh well, that's going to happen in water too. So you have the opportunity to learn from electricity and gas and do things a little bit differently. So this was the comment about, there is a strong propensity of people to feel that you're more community-centred. But about 50%, almost 50% said, you know what, I'm a bit neutral on that. Now if I was to show you this for electricity and gas, the majority is down at the disagree, strongly disagree. Except in an emergency, there's a bushfire or a storm, in which case those seasonal points, you can see it in the data, the seasonal points usually around the storm season go sky high and then they dip. So it's a roller coaster for those guys in terms of perception. So we asked them, actually, what do you think about the difference in services that you get? What was interesting is you can see that big bar in the middle, it's about, I trust you more, but I'm kind of getting the same levels of service. About 60% said I'm getting similar levels of service. But there's a couple that say, actually, we think we're getting significantly better service. And guess what? The majority of those were in rural areas. So you're getting a bit of a theme here. I want to feel like I'm part of the community. I want to feel that I'm rewarded for the actions I take. I want to take actions. I want you to talk to me. And in actual fact, I believe that there are services that you can give me that I want right now in terms of control and comparison. So this is the discussion about the Pandora's box. 53% of the survey said they would save water to assist the environment. So that's half of your consumer base basically saying, I want to assist the environment. What we've seen though in some of the other markets in the UK and the US is some scepticism, particularly about water companies saying that we are green, we are water efficient, and if they don't have the credentials to back it up and the evidence, that particular segment that are interested in that, they want to really understand the detail of what you are doing to make your commitment to the environment. And 83% of the survey said it was important, or very important, that your provider, your water provider, cared about the environment. But it's not enough to say you care, you've got to show me that you care. Tell me what you are doing to improve the environment in Mount Macedon, or wherever it is. I just happen to be biased towards where I live. So these are the numbers, right? 54% are interested in helping the environment. Obviously everybody's interested in the opportunity to save money. There's no doubt about that. That's a kind of given. That's a ticket to the game. You have to do that. But on top of that, there's a number of nuances that are particular to your industry. So these are the numbers. This is the 82%. It's very important that my water corporation cares for the natural environment. We then shifted into some discussions around complacency, as I said before. Do you act now? Do you act later? When do you act? The goodwill that you have in the industry has been built on the quality of supply, but we know that might be impacted depending on the source of water. We can have a big debate about that another time. We know that low prices, the goodwill has been based on low prices, but we know they're going to increase, and you guys are better informed than I to make comment on that, but it's pretty inevitable that prices will increase. And we also know that infrastructure upgrades and things that happen cause bumps along the way. So if goodwill has been based on quality of supply, low prices and consistent delivery, and all three of those things are changing, you need to think about doing something. How are you going to reassure your consumers as you go through that? This is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, this is how it will impact you, and this is why we're doing it. So they can come on the journey with you and they understand, as opposed to the goodwill slowly getting unravelled as things change. And you can imagine that trust starts to erode. And we've seen that in some of the other industries. If you don't tell me why you're upgrading your ageing infrastructure and electricity and I get a big price shock, Well, I think it's the rapacious network companies, or I think it's the competitive foreign-owned retailers.